hyperscalers can utilize in the build-out of data centers so they're not plugging into the power grid. That kind of thing, I think, has long legs, even if CapEx spending slows. But then there are other areas where they could take a hit because the build-out slows. And keep in mind that a lot of the surveys, a lot of the anecdotal information we're hearing thus far is that AI is really working for coding. That is it's just an incredible technology in terms of advancing coding and not needing coders. But when you extend out beyond that, we're not hearing as many good things. So it could take longer to see an adoption. And then I think that just slows the whole food chain.
I have vibe coded an app. It doesn't work well. But I did vibe code something, which is ridiculous.
It
basically emails me who's ringing the opening bell every day. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be where the open tennis courts.
That's also a really good app, and I should build that. I wonder, though, okay, if the payoff is less than expected, that seems to be a bigger problem just because the money that's sloshing around this ecosystem is just the CapEx. It's not the return on investment yet. Considering this is a market that's being held up by the pillar of these tech companies, and its economy that's really been leaning into the spending and the industrial revolution that's coming alongside this, a slower spend and a slower payoff, is that not something that wouldn't just take the index down with it, but maybe the American economy?
Well, I think there's certainly that potential. And then, of course, if you see the index go down, then that has ramifications for high-income consumers. Because if we think about kind of the two legs that have been driving the U.S. economy in 2025 and thus far in 26, it's been the AI CapEx build-out, and it has been consumer spending, but only high-income consumers who are very, very sensitive to the stock market. And so if we were to see some kind of stock market sell-off, that could really slow consumer spending. So yes, this is all very interconnected and could be problematic for both the stock market and the overall U.S. economy.
Christina, can I just ask a brief question about Korea and the dynamics there? We finally got some movement from the regulators on these leveraged ETFs. You know, they make up a lot more of the trading environment in Korea than they do here, but there are very many of them here as well and proliferating all the time. A, does it fix the Korea stability problem? And B, could we see something like that here?
Well, I think there are question marks. Certainly it has the potential to, and hopefully it will. But keep in mind, there's a lot going on in Korea, and a lot is riding on actually the AI trade. So you know, it certainly could go some ways to fixing the stability problem, but I can't say that with such a narrow market, we're out of the woods.
So these are some really big risks you're talking about right now. How are you adjusting your portfolio and where you're thinking about where's safe in this market to maybe ride out or protect yourself from some of this if we do see some of those concerns manifest themselves?
Well, we have a wide variety of portfolios at MAM, and I think that really, to me, is so important right now, having that ability to be well diversified, having exposure to portfolios that enable you to hedge risks. And you can do that in so many different ways. So I certainly think it's important to still have exposure to this AI theme. This is long lasting. It's likely to evolve a lot, just as we saw with the internet, with the tech boom of the late 1990s. So many of those companies have survived and thrived. It's all about being actively managed and evolving with.
Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Cottrell. Thank you for joining. We're live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All these videos are free. Please help support the work by donating. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on my webpage. You can also be a paid member to my Substack and my Patreon channels. So please help support the work that I do. Now, for the ones that are in the zone of the particulate matter from the fires from the north and the west, I highly recommend that you get my structural nanosilver lozenges and my structural nanosilver gels. What they will do is help to reduce the irritation. So make sure that you get the lozenges. You can get them in Manuka honey or in orange splash. But when you're getting exposed to these particulates, you're going to cause irritation to your oral pharynx. The structural nanosilver lozenges will protect the oral pharynx because it's creating secretions to protect and neutralizing anything that you may not want to be breathing in, all right? In addition, I have structural nano silver gels. I have it in a tube form, in a quick dispenser form. They're dual purpose. You can use them as a daily skincare, put them on a cut, it'll help to heal the cut quicker. During the allergy season, lightly coat your nostrils, or even the cold season, but especially during this fire season that's taking place. A lot of particulate matter will be in the air, you're gonna be breathing it in, and it's gonna cause irritation. Lightly coat your nostrils, and what it'll do is it'll capture in that particulate matter. And taking lozenges are going to create the secretions to protect your oral pharynx. That way, you're not causing irritation to your epithelial lining. Super important to pay attention to what I'm saying here. The particulate matter from the fires will cause irritation and increase the probability of an upper respiratory infection. So you need to pay attention to me. Structural nail silver lozenges help to protect the oral pharynx, and use the structural nail silver gel to lightly coat your nostrils. And that way you're mitigating the problem. And of course, stay indoors, stay away from the outdoors as this particulate matter is going over your town. Very important to pay attention to what I'm saying here. It works. Make sure you use the lozenges, and make sure you use the structural nail silver gel. Make sure you use discount 5 so you can save some money. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the lozenges, and get the structural nail silver gels. Alrighty. This was 2 hours ago.
Check this out. I'm going to show you how I afforded this car. Okay, you ready? All right, $118 for car insurance.
As the air quality worsens across New York City, Mayor Joe is urging New Yorkers to limit their time outdoors.
We've all seen the smoky, hazy skies due to wildfires burning in Canada. Conditions are expected to worsen today. Eyewitness News reporter Phil Tate is live in Brooklyn Heights with more on this AccuWeather.
Yes, Stephanie Pedro, good morning. We've been out here for a couple of hours. Brittany has mentioned that you can actually smell the smoke, but also we're dealing with a very poor air quality. Take a live look right now. We're at the Brooklyn Promenade. You can take a look at the New York City skyline, and the haze is blanketing the city this morning. Now, New York State is under an air quality advisory, and that's due to the smoke from more than 100 wildfires burning in Canada. But take a look at this video of what passengers flying out of LaGuardia saw aboard a flight. Orange, hazy skies, reducing visibility. Now today you can see the same hazy skies, visible smoke. We can even see spikes in smoke-related pollution. Fine particle pollution can cause shortness of breath, cough, and dizziness, and even fatigue. Today's air quality index is already at 162, projected to hit 200. Around 160 is in the unhealthy category. Experts say to reduce or eliminate outdoor activities with the conditions, the city has already stepped in, handing out KN95 maps at various locations and extending the heat emergency plan through today.
If you get to a place with air conditioning, one of the things that's important to remember is sometimes if you don't have air conditioning, you open your windows, maybe to let a breeze in, but when the weather is not good like this, the air quality isn't good, you don't want to keep your windows open to let the adverse air quality in your home.
Mayor Mamdani taking to social media, alerting New Yorkers about the poor air quality and encouraging folks who may be sensitive to the conditions, including children, people with compromised immune system, heart and lung conditions, to stay in the cool indoors. Right now, back out here live from Brooklyn, you're taking a live look at the New York City skyline, that haze covering some of the tops of those buildings. Of course, we've been here before on just hot days when we're not dealing with those issues, and you can really just see the skyline clearly. That is not the case today. The heat also will be dialing up today, so you want to make sure that you're taking just all precaution. If you're going outdoors, officials also advising us to mask up. We're live in Brooklyn Heights this morning. I'm Phil Tate, Channel 7 Eyewitness News. We can even see spikes in smoke-related pollution.
So please pay attention. The smoke quality that's going over the Midwest and into New England, also the smoke that's coming from the west side of the state, is really important to pay attention. The structural nanosilver lozenges will protect your oral pharynx. And using the structural nanosilver gel, lightly coat your nostrils will help to mitigate irritation into your oral pharynx. Another thing that you want to take is the Max 35 or the Cleanse. All right, take a teaspoon, swish it in your mouth, and gargle about 20-30 seconds and then swallow. What this will do is boost up the innate immune system and reduce that potential irritation from the particulate matter from the fire. So you want to get the gels, you want to get the lozenges, and get the Max 35 or the Cleanse. And this will help to reduce that irritation, protect that oral pharynx, and help to protect your body from getting an upper respiratory infection. It's really important to pay attention to what I'm saying here. Let me repeat. The structural nanosilver, Max 35 or Cleanse, gargle it, swallow. It's going to protect that oral pharynx and boost up your innate immune system. The structural nanosilver lozenges will create the secretions to protect the oral pharynx, to prevent that upper respiratory issue. And the gel that I have, the structural nanosilver gel, either the tube form or the quick dispenser called Renew, lightly coat your nostrils while you're going through this problem, and it will help you. So please pay attention to me here. Or don't. And don't be surprised if something bad happens to you. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Was approved, I think, over 5 years ago at this point. It was sort of slow to take off, but now it is a blockbuster drug for J&J, and a lot of clinics around the country have gotten more comfortable with prescribing something like this that requires patients to actually be in the clinic and be monitored for a couple of hours after getting a drug, just to make sure it's safe for them to drive home and things like that. And so it's, the expectation is that obviously the FDA will still look at all of these studies and drugs closely, but they're a lot more accepting of these kinds of medications than they once were. And the Trump administration is also quite supportive of these efforts, and they're taking some steps to loosen restrictions around the studying of psychedelic drugs.
I don't mean to belittle the power of psychedelic drugs, especially in treating things like depression, but it feels somehow connected that on one hand, psychedelics are being used for medical purposes. On the other hand, medical companies are a casino now that you can bet on Couchy based on their drug outcomes. You wrote this story. What exactly is Couchy offering?
Yeah, so Couchy is deepening its offerings in biotech, essentially, offering more contracts related to clinical trials and FDA decisions. So exactly what we were just talking about, the FDA deciding whether or not to approve a drug. Now it's going to offer contracts explicitly tied to that. Both Couchy and Polymarket have offered some healthcare-related contracts, but this is sort of its biggest push yet into this world. And they're working with an AI-powered platform called Applied XL that will sort of do the resolution behind the scenes and work on some of these contracts.
Is there nothing that can't be turned into a product? Nothing about our, wants and desires and need for dopamine?
Yeah, it seems like it.
Incredible, Maddie. Great story. That is Bloomberg's Madison Muller. And coming up, Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan says the consumer remains resilient. More on that interview next. This is Bloomberg Open Interest.
Just to reiterate, because of the smoke that's coming from the Canadian fires and the west side of the country, it's really important to get the Max 35, the Cleanse, structural nanosilver lozenges, and the gels. And they will help to boost up that innate immune system and protect that oral pharynx. Super important to reduce the chances of an upper respiratory infection. Very important to pay attention. That particular matter, if causing too much irritation at the oral pharynx, will lead to further problems in the upper respiratory tract. So you want to mitigate that. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Right now we're going to go over the...
How are you finding the time to send over all these meeting notes?
I got a secret. I've been using granola.
What is granola?
It's an AI notepad. You take your notes during the meeting, whatever you meant.
Doing this right now from the Biden Treasury official in Sasha Sarin.
Fed
She's
rate
a Yale Law School professor, president, and co-founder of the Budget Lab, also former Trump Treasury official Joe Livornia. He is CNBC's chief economist. What do you think about all this?
So I think where we are this week is we got an inflation read that was lower than expectations, but still pretty high. We're in the mid threes. We have consumer retail sales holding up pretty well. We have jobless claims indicating what the jobs numbers have been indicating for the last few months, which is the labor market is doing pretty well. And so I think where we're looking at a picture that is starting to form of an economy where inflation is really a core issue. And remember, all of these are backward-looking indicators, except for what Rick was saying towards the end on business indicators. And that means that we're not actually capturing a bunch of what is happening with respect to the conflict in Iran, or I suspect upward pressure on oil prices and gas prices is going to continue in the next few weeks.
Joe, you agree with that?
I do. I mean, the economy is booming, but there's certainly inflation pressure. This week's data was obviously excellent, as Natasha mentioned. However, given the fact we're going to have double digits, if not in the mid to high teens for CapEx and GDP, the retail sales are strong. The labor market shows no signs of weakening now. It actually appears to be firming. Claims are super low. You've got monetary policy that's very easy, and inflation will not go back to target without some help from the Fed. Last year, Andrew, we got 75 basis points in easing from the Fed because there was concern about the labor market. Those concerns now are misplaced, and the inflation outlook is more uncertain. It's more fraught now than it was 6-7 months ago when the Fed was easing or contemplating further easing. So yes, the economy is good, but it's going to need some help from the Fed to kind of slow things down.
So, Joe, are you of the view the Fed is, and the new Kevin Warsh Fed is going to raise interest rates, lower interest rates?
Yes,
She thinks you don't even have to touch the interest rates, that there's sort of other tools with which you can use.
Well, like I like Judy. I mean, but the fact is that monetary policy is a very blunt instrument, and the Fed funds rate is the primary tool to do so. The Fed is not going to be shrinking its balance sheet by selling assets, so it just leaves them the Fed funds rate. And it's clear with this AI boom that the neutral or real rate is higher. That jives with Kevin's view that the productivity story is going to be positive and play out. But if you're worried about inflation, as Natasha said, it's been consistently elevated. The core rates are still well above 2%. You look historically and say, okay, when in the past has inflation, when you're at trend or better trend growth, has inflation ever gone back to where you want it just magically? Chris Waller made the same point in his speech this week. So the Fed, in my view, has to hike. Kevin will hike, and it will be this year.
What do you say?
I so agree with Joe, and I actually think another person who agrees with Joe is Kevin Warsh. You heard him in testimony yesterday saying that, we shouldn't make anything too much of any one particular data print that's showing inflation below expectations.
That's strong me too.
Inflation is like my focus, and it is important for us to, and the Fed will do everything in its power in order to be able to effectuate on the price stability side of the mandate. So he actually was sounding like Kevin Warsh of old with respect to his focus on inflation.
If I need to raise, I'm raising. It's going to be here after.
Because I think Judy thought that you don't have to touch the rate. Also, by the way,
Judy always thinks that that's her whole thing is about supply.
But I was going to say, Gary Cohn was on our air on CNBC, I would say in the last 24, 48 hours, and made a similar point about maybe not having to touch the rate itself, but having these other tools. I don't know if you think that's even plausible.
I think that the Fed has other tools, but as Joe's talking about, the sort of the main tool that they have to effectuate interest rates in the economy is the Fed funds rate. And those other tools are both untested, but also untested on the horizon that you're wanting to see rates come down. And remember, we haven't been anywhere close to the 2% inflation target, essentially since the post-pandemic period. So the Fed has had a lot of work to do, work that's been exacerbated by the choices that the administration has made that have been inflationary, like the tariffs. And I think it's sort of difficult to make the case that we're not in an environment where the question is, when will the Fed hike?
Right.
Will the Fed hike?
And Joe, the old Fed, what is the main criticism from the same people now that are resistant to raise rates? The criticism was that they waited too long and they're never going to get out from underneath that. The Powell Fed for what happened. And I guarantee you, Warsh doesn't want to He was probably one of the people. He was one of the people that it was very clear that they should have done something earlier. So he's not going to be in a position where he makes the same mistake.
Right. No, of course not. I mean, look, Kevin was the Fed governor from 2006 to 2011. He's been kind of an institutionalist. I don't mean that in a bad way, but kind of traditional institutionalist in his approach, and that's not going to change now that he's got the job. I mean, yes, if you have a productivity boom and you see the labor costs plunge and inflation pressures moderate, absolutely, then he could hold things and wait. And I think the board will allow him to wait a meeting or two if he believes the inflation outlook, for whatever reason, is going to meaningfully improve. But beyond hiking the Fed funds rate, I mean, Joe, can you imagine if the Fed was going to try to sell some of this $2.5 trillion in mortgages? I mean, how disruptive that would be to markets and where long rates would go. If the Kevin Warsh-led Fed, which I believe will be a very good Fed, raises rates, you actually, in the short term, you actually may get long rates to actually fall, and that may actually, President Trump may like that, because those are the rates that matter most, are those long rates.
We've seen some, I've been mentioning that, and people have mentioned it to me, that sometimes when it seems like rates are headed higher, the long end, sometimes when it seems like they're not going to raise, that the long end rates go higher. When it seems like they're not, you would think that if you're going to cut rates, that rates would come down, and the opposite effect on the long end. It's like, oh, they don't have the nerve to do it.
If the Fed hikes and if the inflation risk premium comes, collapses, you'll see lower break-evens and interest rates go down.
Yeah.
31% of grills will go wienerless this summer. Don't become a summer statistic.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the very high-quality probiotics. Taking good probiotics is the basis for good health. It's a great foundation to start with. You can get it in a veggie cap form or in a powdered form. I prefer the powdered form, but it's up to you. Either one, very high quality, but take it every day. And what this will do is help with your gut biome, help with breaking up your nutrients, allow you to absorb your nutrients more efficiently. They'll reduce leaky gut syndrome, improve your immune system, bring down inflammation, improve your sleep pattern, improve your skin. It'll help with brain function because you're consolidating memory now with better sleep. Yes, good gut biome helps with sleep. You're going to be able to consolidate your memory, so your memory is going to improve. And your metabolism will be better. Good health starts at the gut. So please go to my store, get the veggie cap version or the probiotic version. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. And again, because of the fires that are happening from the north and in the west, it behooves you to make sure you use my Max 35 and Cleanse, the structural nanosilver lozenges, and the gels. Why? Because it will help to protect your oral pharynx and reduce an upper respiratory problem. So please take my advice. Gargle the Max 35 or Cleanse, use the structural nanosilver gels, lightly coat your nostrils, and use the lozenges to create those secretions to protect that oral pharynx. All right, let's listen into, I don't normally play the PBS NewsHour, but this is an interesting clip talking about post-literate age, why fewer Americans are reading for pleasure.
A provocative new essay is widening the... In the last few years, there's been growing concern about how reading habits are changing among children, both in school and at home. That includes questions about what kids are reading and why fewer books seem to be part of their educational diet. Now, a provocative new essay is widening the lens, raising similar questions about reading habits across the broader population. Senior arts correspondent Jeffrey Brown has our conversation.
You can see it in the numbers. Fewer than half of all American adults reported reading a book of any kind in 2022, according to the National Endowment for the Arts. And just 38% read a novel or a short story. A separate survey found the proportion of Americans who read for pleasure on a given day fell from 28% 2 decades ago to 16% in 2023. In some ways, it's a continuing trend, but a provocative new cover story in The Atlantic puts it far more dramatically. The age of reading is over. It's by Rose Horowitz, staff writer at The Atlantic, who joins me now. And thanks so much for being with us here. Now, it's a big statement that you're making, so why don't we parse it a little bit? What do you mean, first of all, by the age of reading?
Yes, so what I meant by the age of reading was that this is bigger than what the statistics are showing us. That is really going away is a time when reading was a major way that people transmitted, culture, information, news, and really derived meaning from text. And my piece is arguing that that's ending and that we're entering what I call a post-literate age.
And as you remind us at the beginning of this essay, this age of reading, which many of us have been so immersed in for so long, it actually doesn't have that long a history.
Yes, well, so, I think we think of reading as kind of something that's innate or inevitable, but actually it's quite historically contingent. Reading first emerged 6,000 years ago, and it was only relatively recently that large numbers of people could read and that people spent a lot of time pleasure reading. So this is something that is kind of new, and when this age started, it really transformed society and the way people thought and the way politics and culture worked. And as it's going away now, I think we're seeing changes of the same magnitude in our society.
Now, you referred to what we're entering as a post-literate age.
Now, if she's right, which I think she is, because I've been covering this for a little while, listening to professors that created podcasts talking about this very issue. There's about 3 or 4 out there that are really good podcasts to listen to about this. This means that we're moving into an age that's very similar to Aristotle, where the masses were illiterate. And it's the thinkers, the readers, that will be the sages of the society. In other words, more people will end up being taken advantage of.
There's been plenty of discussion, of course, about social media, short videos on TikTok and elsewhere, and you're arguing that we are reading differently already. So what do you mean by a post-literate age?
If we look at the statistics, people still know how to read. The literacy rate is actually historically very high. And, in many ways, we're probably reading more words than ever. If you think about the number of emails and text messages and social media posts you're reading, we're inundated with words and we're surrounded with them. But what's happening is that this kind of these number of words that we're swimming in has made it so that it's almost so difficult to focus on, any serious or complex work of literature for an extended period of time. And so
This is what I mean. Because people no longer can think, no longer have the stamina to work through a complex problem, people will use that to take advantage of others. Ones that can think through complex problems, ones that do have stamina, will win in this new age.
A crisis of literacy, it's that we are entering a post-literate age.
And you write, reading shaped the modern mind, its disappearance will reshape it. How will that change things?
The bedrock principle in neuroscience is that you get good at what you practice and your brain adjusts to, improve at the things that you spend time doing. And so if we are spending less time reading, as we know that we are going to struggle much more to do it. And it's not that, we're going to be unable to decode words, but we have much less background knowledge and vocabulary to aid in comprehension. We are less accustomed to persisting through something for an extended period of time. And already we see that, 2 decades ago, the average attention span on a screen was 2.5 minutes, and 5 years ago, it fell to 47 seconds. So we're already seeing, people kind of being less accustomed to focusing on something. We're already seeing an erosion of some of our, abilities to do complex synthesis and analysis and comprehension, and we can expect that would continue.
And some of these things, we have been looking at on our program, and of course have been well documented elsewhere, just the way this impacts children and the way they learn.
Yes, I think for me, reporting this piece, sort of the most chilling statistic I found was that only 2% of American adults report reading to a child on any given day. And so I think,
there is going to be a large cohort of youth that as they move into college, they will only cover a fraction of what was read when I was in school or when the boomers were in school. Gen Xers literally are probably going to be the last generation that literally is intelligent. And everybody after is going to be, in the aggregate, just not intelligent enough to move the society forward. You can't say with a straight face that a generation that is so hooked on TikTok and can't read a book is literally going to drive the economy. People would say, well, you don't need to know the humanities or your history. Well, yes, you do. One, it makes you more intelligent and a little bit more wise and have an understanding of historical events and how they built up the society that we have today. The pluses and minuses of decisions of leaders, the path of mankind, it's really important to understand. And as technology evolves and new branches of knowledge are created, there's going to be this concept of the history of things, not just history. And we think of history as just understanding what happened with Napoleon or what happened during World War I or World War II. Well, that's really the history of war or the history of geopolitics. But there is such a thing as the history of medicine, the history of engineering, the history of chemistry. So you're going to have sciences, because they've evolved over time, the history of that particular discipline. And when you have people that can't read or do not have the stamina to know the history of their discipline, they probably are going to make mistakes. Some are somewhat benign, some could be catastrophic. And so when you don't have an ethical framework, if you don't have a historical context, how can you really push knowledge forward? Anyone that has done a master's thesis or a dissertation for a Ph.D. or anyone that has done any research of significance, you have to do a lit review, a literature review. What does the literature say? Where's the gaps? How is your research contributing to the body of knowledge? So even during a graduate program where you're doing research, you are forced to know the history of your discipline, the history of things is what I call it. But when you have a society that doesn't have the stamina of reading, how can you really do a proper lit review? oh, I'm just going to use Grok and I'm just going to type it in and Grok is going to produce all of the citations for that particular discipline. Really? Is it going to be accurate? Sometimes it's not. And do you really understand the lit review if you just have Grok or ChatGPT do it for you? Because not only are you supposed to find the literature and what is called coding, but find literature and dissect that literature under certain variables and what's the key findings. You're reading the lit review, you're understanding the lit review, you're analyzing the lit reviews in different ways, different theoretical frameworks. Such and such said this, yet these researchers found this. And you have to do the dialectic. If you don't have the stamina, how do you do that? Literally, Gen X is the last generation that actually will have a brain. And everyone else is going to be, they'll have this cell phone connected to their head. I guarantee you, that most people out there that are young can't read this book, do not have the stamina to read this book. It's over 1,000 pages long. It's the history of capitalism. It's fascinating. Fascinating. The history of economics, the history of capitalism, the history of things. It's a big problem, big problem. So we are going to lose scholarship. And you can see this happening on X and on social media out there, even on podcasts. You are seeing a dumbing down of a society. Now, not all podcasts are like that. Some podcasts are very informative, and they're trying to hold the line in terms of scholarship. But you have a society that is demonizing experts. You have a society that doesn't want to pursue higher degrees of scholarship. And don't be surprised that other societies, like China, will supplant you because all you wanted was Netflix and TikTok and X and all this stuff that is just garbage, instead of actually being a scholar. Because when you're a scholar and you know how to think, you can absorb information outside of your domain and be an expert over time. These are considered Renaissance people or polymaths. But we are so pigeonholed because of this quick click type social media that we assume that scholars aren't important anymore, or that if someone is an expert in one domain, they can't be an expert in another domain. But yet, baby boomers and Gen X, many of them are experts in multiple domains because of a changing economy that we saw in the United States, where we had to reinvent ourselves. And when you reinvent yourself, don't you think that you will have expert knowledge in multiple domains? So what's happening with the quick click generation, the selfie generation, is that they don't respect scholars to the point where they want to be a scholar themselves. They don't see them as a means to elevate their own educational goals. And they're becoming so used to type in a particular question and you get an answer from OpenAI or some other LLM, and not have the discipline to actually ask, is that right? How do we know that that is true? There's no critical thinking. So, this is dangerous. So if you have small kids, get them away from the computer, get them away from the cell phones and the iPads, and get a book in front of them. Because if you don't, the compound effect of having your kid not conversant in language, in reading and writing and rhetoric, your kid is weak, intellectually weak. And weak kids will be taken advantage of.
Now that the current young generation enjoys reading much less and spends less time reading than today's adults did when they were kids. We know that every year older a child gets, the less they like to read. In focus groups, high school students described reading for pleasure as an alien practice. And something else that we know is that schools are assigning fewer and fewer books throughout middle and high school. In a survey last year, teachers in middle and high school reported assigning between 0 and 4 books a year, and 80% of elementary school teachers in a separate survey said that students receive a digital device by the time they enter kindergarten. So we're seeing that schools are
And this means not only will they be below their reading level that they should be compared to previous generations, but they will also be lower in their skills in terms of writing. Writing is a complex thing. Now, there's a big difference between, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but there's a big difference between electrical engineering and coders. Now, some people go, well, computer science where you're making kernels and you're making software and you're making operating systems. Well, wait a minute here. Most schools will put the computer science department in the liberal arts department. Why? Because it's the structure to create something that is textual. There's a textual construct to it. If this, do this, it's very logical. It's telling a story. It's telling a logical narrative. It has routines in it, but writing code is a form of writing. Just like writing a paper, a regular paper talking about Caesar, the life of Caesar, or the history of the Roman Empire. You have to have some knowledge, and you have to have some sort of cogent argument that is presented. And the better writers can weave the prose better than others. Better writers have better vocabulary. But one common thing with writers is that they're readers. You have to read to actually be a good writer. You have to read to actually have knowledge to write about. So if you're not reading as much, there is no way that you're going to be a good writer. So we've gotten into this world of STEM, where we really need mesh. Before STEM, it was the humanities, liberal arts. With STEM, it's science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But there's a problem. If you only focus on STEM, you've lost humanities. you've lost the liberal arts. And this is the reason why students need to be taught mesh, mathematics, engineering, science, and humanities. So you can actually think, so you actually know the history of things. It's a big problem that's going to be happening here. And so if you're Gen X or baby boomers, young baby boomer, who's going to pay for your retirement? Who's going to actually support the retirement of these two groups? Oh, the people that are younger than Gen X. Now, if the people that are younger than Gen X are reading less, and the ones that are going into college now are not that bright in terms of actual skill sets measured by the metric, how well do you read? What's your reading endurance or stamina? And how well do you write? Do you think that we're going to have a society that is going to be able to actually support our Social Security? Because the ones that are in college right now, or the ones going into college, fast forward 20 years, they're in the job market. They have decent incomes, supposedly. And the Gen Xers would be, at that time, 70 years old. And the ones that are 65, you're going to be 85 if you're a boomer. You really want to bet your retirement on people that don't know how to read? Do you really want to bet your retirement on people that don't know how to write? But that's what's happening. So getting back to computer science coding as a liberal art, we have unfortunately convinced ourselves that writing in that kind of form was an end-all. Because you'll be able to make an app. Maybe you could sell it on Apple's store and be a millionaire. Instead of actually having the skill sets to be more like Cicero. I'd much rather talk to someone that's like Cicero than talk to someone like Zuckerberg. Because Zuckerberg's a dipshit.
Where they're citing for fewer books. And so I think that we can expect that this trend that we're seeing will only accelerate in the years to come.
So one thing you write about in the piece is the way that the changes in thinking, the changes in reading impacts who has influence in our culture.
Exactly.
It's gone away from some of the traditional, perhaps, sources as writers to...
Exactly. Now, I have not read her article. This is the second video I've seen of her being interviewed. But I suspect that what she's going to say is readers that are declining, because readers are declining, the influence of writers are declining. And the intellectuals, the part of the intelligentsia, communicate to the audience through oratory and writing. So if you have a group of people that don't know what you're talking about when you have a podcast or you're being interviewed at a conference, and people aren't writing as much and people aren't reading as much, then the intelligentsia won't be able to communicate to the masses. So what happens is that it keeps on getting dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber. But the ones that are transnational capitalists, they're going to look at this and they're going to say, how can I take advantage of a group of people that can't think? How can I take advantage? And this is what's happening with Anthropic. This is what's happening with Sam Altman with OpenAI. They are betting that a large part of society will not be thinking deep enough to actually see their con. They want to charge you to think through tokens. Think about that for a second. We're born with a brain. And if we cultivate that brain, we'll be able to think. It doesn't cost much. Maybe the energy that you receive from a tuna sandwich. But thinking doesn't cost much. It's the energy that you absorb through eating. And you cultivate that brain. That's your cost. Now, some people cultivate it through formal education. Some people cultivate it through informal education. The formal way is a little bit more expensive than the informal way. But the point is that you're cultivating it. But now what you have is a group of people that's growing that hasn't cultivated the brain. And Sam Altman and Anthropic and some of these other AI companies are saying, don't worry, all you got to do is type it in or speak it, and the AI will think for you. But it's going to cost you a monthly fee or per token charge. So we're going to charge you to think. So dumb down the society and we're going to charge you to think. So this is what the intelligentsia is doing. The intelligentsia is actually taking advantage of these people that are being dumbed down. This is what I mean. This is what I mean. If you are not a free thinker, you will be taken advantage of. 100% sure about that.
Influencers and others. Tell us a little bit about that.
You know, in a recent poll, 30% or 60% of Gen Z said that they would be an influencer if they could. And so I think it's a very different way of culture being passed, of power, you know, being in society.
How is Gen Z going to be an influencer if they can't read? I mean, think about that for a second. What the fuck do you know to be even an influencer on? I mean, you kind of need to know something to have a podcast. There's the problem. It's AI slop. But it's even worse than AI slop. It's intellectual slop. Because with AI slop, you just can kind of tune it out and you just realize, oh, that's just AI-driven content, and most people turn it off. They don't watch AI content on YouTube. Especially like documentaries about history. It's garbage. And people know it's AI slop. But intellectual slop is a little bit more pernicious. Ooh, fancy word, pernicious. What does that mean, Dr. Paul Cottrell? Pernicious. Seems magical. Well, if you have a group of people that are slowly being dumbed down, there are side effects that will be negative to society.
We know that cultural and economic power tends to flow to people who are skilled at using the dominant communications media of the age. And right now, that is short form video, and it's not text.
I can't resist at the end of our conversation here pointing out that this death of writing warning comes in a very long and fairly complex essay form.
Yes, so I write in a piece about my own experience reading and growing up in a family of readers and having books passed down to me from my parents and my older siblings. And there definitely was an irony in putting this warning about how nobody reads in a 9,000 word essay. But I wanted to share my experience because I think that other people can relate to it. I loved reading when I was a child and I still love reading today, but I noticed that it almost slipped away from me without me even noticing.
All right, Rose Horowitz, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's listen to the local news about the air quality in New York. Now, just a reminder, there's a fire that's happening in Canada, but there's also a fire on the west coast of the United States. So people are being exposed to particulate matter, especially in the Midwest and New England, and just south of New England. So like New York, even all the way going to Washington, DC. Pay attention to me. That particulate matter that's in the air when you're breathing it will cause irritation and cause a problem with your oral pharynx. You want to use the Max 35 or cleanse, gargle about 20-30 seconds and swallow it to protect that oral pharynx. In addition, use the structural nail silver lozenges on my store to create the secretions to protect the oral pharynx, and use the structural nail silver gels that I have and lightly coat your nostrils. When you do that, you're helping your innate immune system and you're reducing the probability of having problems with your upper respiratory system. This is very important. And this is also an example of knowing things to try to help people. All right, let's listen in.
Heat and humidity wasn't enough. Canadian wildfires now, as the city and a chunk of the tri-state area dealing with unhealthy air quality.
You can see it, you can feel it a little bit, yeah. Smell it. Robert Moses is live at Long Island City, Queens with the very latest. Robert, what are you seeing out there?
Dan, Rosanna, the smoke from distant fires, not so distant this morning as we have watched the skyline here. The smoke has become more and more apparent, the poor air quality quite evident. If you are in one of those sensitive groups that Mike mentioned, you're being urged today to take certain precautions. Let's take a look at the air quality index chart, because right now we are hovering right around an AQI of about 110. That's the orange range, which means unhealthy for sensitive groups. So they could feel effects. The general public less likely to feel those effects. The culprit, more than 100 wildfires burning in Canada. In one apocalyptic scene, members of a train crew in northern Ontario found themselves surrounded by flames. Luckily, they were safely evacuated. An orange haze hovered over Toronto. Now, the air here has not been orange, but it is still dangerous because of the tiny particles that it contains. We spoke to a doctor who says that he is concerned about those sensitive groups.
The people that I would be most concerned about are children, older adults, pregnant women, our cancer patients, the immunocompromised, anyone with an underlying heart or lung condition, things like asthma, COPD, heart disease. I'll add one more thing as a pulmonologist. You don't need a diagnosis to be effective. There's plenty of people with mild, undiagnosed sensitivity in their airways that are going to notice symptoms for the very first time during an event like this. You're going to feel things like coughing, wheezing, shortness of breath, chest tightness, chest pain. Some people might even feel lightheadedness or unusual fatigue. If these symptoms are mild, just get indoors. That's the safest space you can be. Use a rescue inhaler if you happen to need one. Call your doctor if things
not only are asthmatic problem, it could exacerbate asthmatic problems and pulmonary problems, cardiac problems, but also it could do damage and irritation to the oral pharynx that causes further upper respiratory infection that could lead to further problems with pulmonary system. This is the reason why I keep on saying, use the structural nail silver gel, lightly coat your nostrils, gargle with the Max 35 or cleanse, and use the lozenges, the structural nail silver lozenges, to protect that oral pharynx. Super important. But also stay indoors. And don't run your air conditioner. If your air conditioner has a system where it's bringing in air from the inside, from the outside into the inside, depends on what kind of air conditioner you have. Some people have a kind of like a standalone room air conditioner that is just electric. That's fine. But if you have a system that is from outside and it's like central air, you may have problem. Depends on how the whole circulation is taking place for your HVAC system. So be aware of that. Maybe it's just better to just have a fan indoors to just mitigate the problem. But this could cause severe issues if people already have a predisposition. And there are many people that have predispositions because of poor lifestyle, because of age, or even issues that are lingering from the crisis that we had in 2020. So it behooves you to listen to me.
In the next, within a few hours or within a day. But if they persist, they worsen, you experience severe difficulty breathing and chest pain, don't wait. Seek emergency care.
And as you heard the doctor say, the best course of action today is to spend as much time inside as possible. That's probably good advice anyway on a day like today. It's going to eclipse 90 degrees. But if you do have to be outside, you are urged to wear...
But let's think about this for a second. With the news media, just in general about anything, especially when it comes to the human body. The human body is a complex system. And to understand it, you have to know a lot of different disciplines, a lot of different scientific disciplines. But why is it that these journalists are so fucking dumb that they have to talk to a physician to tell them common sense things? Like, poor air quality can cause problems with your heart. Poor air quality can cause respiratory problems. Poor air quality can cause irritation and further problems with the respiratory system. Why does a physician even need to be asked? Why can't they just get it out of their mouth? Why can't they just think? Think. It's common sense. There's the problem. Scroll, just scroll, doom scroll. Just keep on scrolling. Watch the TikTok, watch the short videos, watch the Netflix, don't read. And now we have even the ones that inform the society through the news. This is local news. They're so fucking stupid that they can't literally tell you commonsensical things. Well, we're going to interview Dr. Such and Such to tell you about common sense. What? Don't fall in the trap of silo thinking. If you want to be a true thinker, break the silos. Break the silos. And guess what? You're going to be better off in your life. So this clown, if he's so stupid that he can't tell the American public, or at least the New Yorkers, common sense about the air quality and how it could affect the body, why does he even talk on a local news channel? Because the previous video we were talking about is being able to think, being able to write, being able to have an oratory skill set, be able to read. Because those skills create a knowledge person. A person that can take disparate information, synthesize it, and actually speak. Amazing how that works. This is what you're supposed to learn in high school, in elementary school, and in college. But we have Fox 5 local news in New York who literally can't tell the public common sense.
mask, especially if you're in one of those sensitive groups. And to that end, the city is offering free masks. You can visit on.nyc.gov/free mask, on.nyc.gov/free mask to find a distribution center near you to pick up one of those free masks.
Max 35 gargle, 20 seconds. It's going to help protect the oral pharynx. Structural nanosiliver gel, lightly coat your nostrils. It'll help to block those particulates as you're breathing. And the lozenges to create the secretions that you need to help to protect that oral pharynx and the epithelial cells. They'll go a long way. But we can't find anyone on the internet that actually has a brain. Now, what do they say? Go to your local government official to get a N95 mask. What about staying indoors? Stay indoors for a couple days and let this thing blow over. And oh, by the way, don't run your air conditioner or your HVAC system if you're getting inputs from outside.
So I have to say that most people we've seen this morning have been out and about with no mask. We have seen a couple of them. So do take precautions if you are in one of those sensitive groups. Live in Long Island City, Rosanna and Dan, back to you.
All right, good advice, Robert. Thank you very much.
Good advice, Robert. What? Ones that are in sensitive groups that have already pre-existing conditions, they're worse off in these kinds of environments. But everybody, even if you're healthy, can get issues, especially if you get enough oral pharynx irritation. It adds to the probability of an upper respiratory infection. Because what happens is that once that mucosal barrier is disrupted and you get this pro-inflammatory response, and those cells aren't as robust and the connection of the cells are weaker or tear, then it's easier to get problems and your innate immune system starts to go down. And that's even if you don't have a pre-existing condition. You know, these people, I'm so saddened on the stupidity of news, especially local news, and how generic the physicians answer the question. It's so generic. It doesn't have any detail. It doesn't talk about that, you know, a larger pernicious issue that could arise. Have you heard any of the physicians talk about what I just said about the oral pharynx? No. It's even laughable when they start talking about cyclosporin and how generic they talk about it. People are stupid. I don't know if mankind should live. Maybe God's looking at mankind, looking down on mankind and go, wow, these humans on Earth are really stupid. Maybe an asteroid should hit you. All right, let's talk about another stupid thing that's happening in New York. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support capitalism and help support your health. These are supplements that I take every day to help slow down the aging process. Hey, I'm relatively healthy, especially for someone that's in their mid-50s. So please take my advice. Magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your immune system and help with your brain function so you don't turn into a socialistic retard. And vitamin C and magnesium. Vitamin C and magnesium helps with your skin. It will cross-link with collagen if you drink the filtered water. The water and the vitamin C and the collagen will cross-link and improve your dermal layer. So vitamin C will help with your skin. Vitamin C and magnesium will help to boost up your immune system and help with your brain function. Many people in the United States don't take enough magnesium to help with brain function. So please take my advice and take the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium. You can stack them together. You can take them separately, but I recommend you to stack them together. All right, let's listen to Mandani. But go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 to get $5 off. The link is in the description.
Bet you're watching videos with your phone leaned up against whatever's next, right? The angle's always wrong. It keeps sliding, and one hand is always busy holding it.
Well, welcome back. Well, the luxury real estate market in New York sees signs of slowing following Mayor Zoran Mamdani's pied-à-terre tax going into effect. That is a surcharge on any second home worth more than $1 million. A new report from Olshan Realty finds just one 8-figure home went under contract between July 6th and the 12th. The tax went into effect July 1st. Joining me now with a breakdown is the Peoples Corporation's founder, chairman, and CEO, Don Peoples. Don, good to see you. Welcome back. Do you think it is that pied-à-terre tax that has caused people to leave New York and see a slowdown in the luxury market in New York? What are you seeing?
Absolutely. I think the pied-à-terre tax is going to destroy the ultra-luxury condominium market because most people who buy upscale luxury condos have multiple homes around the country or around the world. And now the threat of additional taxes and a potential wealth tax, people are staying away from New York. And of course, you've had a major exodus, over 210,000 net migration out of New York City in the last 4 years, which, for example, public school enrollment's down 120,000 students within that same time period. So what's happening is people are fleeing to more business-friendly, better tax environments, and also higher quality of life. And that's why I say Florida is prospering, for example. It's a big beneficiary of what's happening in New York. And now they're going to run more and more people out of New York City.
Yeah, and it's Florida, it's Texas, those states with no state income tax are really benefiting from this. Don, a report from the Citizen Budget Commission found that New York's share of millionaires dropped to 8.7% from 12.7% over 12 years. Beginning in 2010, that was the largest decline of millionaires in any state. It resulted in a loss of nearly $11 billion in state tax revenue for the 2022 tax season. So, Don, do you think that Mayor Mamdani or Kathy Hochul, the governor in New York, understand what they're doing by driving out people because of these policies, in fact, impacting their own budget?
Yeah, I think they actually do understand it. They're just not well intended. Yeah. The idea here is they want to use political rhetoric to attack wealthy people who are overly productive, people who are making the city better. They're attacking, like Ken Griffin, who has spent billions of dollars in New York City and given away $600 million to $1 billion in philanthropic investments. And they're running people like him out because they are anti-wealth. And so they don't care if the consequences are a deficient budget. They think they can tax their way out of it. And what they're going to learn is that that's not going to work because wealthy businesses and wealthy people are mobile, and others, and with technology and AI, they don't have to be in New York City. And Florida and other places are pursuing them with a pro-business attitude, a pro-business environment where they're wanted, and people generally go where they're wanted.
Yeah, that is exactly right. And we are seeing money move. I always say money is mobile. Don, many of these high tax policies in blue states causing those wealthy residents to go to lower tax states like Florida, like Texas, like you just said. What are you seeing in Florida? An analysis from the Tax Foundation shows Texas gained the most tax filers between 2022 and 23. Over 56,000 moved to Texas, while California actually saw the biggest decline with more than 100,000 tax filers leaving California. Don, what are you seeing there in Florida?
What we're seeing in Florida is continued growth. It's an overall mindset, by the way. I think that people want to go where there's a good quality of life, where they feel safe to walk the streets and live in their homes, and that they're valued in where they're living, and their contributions are valued. And what's happening is Florida welcomes wealth. Florida welcomes entrepreneurs and businesses. It's becoming the state of dreams. New York City was the the city of optimism, the city of dreams, where you could aspire to do great things or make tremendous amounts of money and create wealth for yourself and your family. It is no more that city. And Florida is at stake. Texas is at stake. They value entrepreneurship. They value people, and they want to provide a good quality of life. And I think that they're going to continue to attract businesses. And California is, I mean, on a nosedive to death. And unless they change structurally and fundamentally, I think California is in for a tremendous day of reckoning.
Yeah, and New York too. I mean, what a sad situation that it was the city of dreams and it no longer is. Florida is the state of dreams. Look, Mamdani is facing renewed criticism over his controversial rent freeze policy as well. That's the rent freeze on 1 year rent stabilized leases. And analysis from the corporate group found that Manhattan's median rent last month hit nearly $5,300, or $4,300 in Brooklyn. Don, what about the rent? People want to sell their home, get out of those tax pressures that Mamdani is putting on them, but if they rent, prices are elevated there as well.
Oh, absolutely, because it's so difficult to do business in New York City today. As a developer, it's difficult, and so that artificially constrains supply. The mindset of trying to tax the reducing volume of people and trying to tax businesses who are fleeing doesn't make any sense. What they need to be doing is trying to create greater wealth, to provide greater opportunities for their citizens and attract entrepreneurs to come there and build their businesses and to provide an environment of optimism. And the reality is that their policies are failing. We need to look, for example, I mean, there's a tremendous deficit in terms of access to capital. There's $83 trillion invested in venture capital and private equity. The biggest investors are public employee pension systems like New York State Common, New York City Common, CalPERS, CalSTRS. And yet, those investors put less than 1.3% into firms run and owned by women and people of color combined, but yet these Democrats are lecturing us on how we have to social engineer our education system, yet they're not providing access to economic opportunities to the citizens that they proclaim to serve.
Right. Well, look, there are so many implications to this. Not only are we seeing rich people flee places like New York and California, but it's impacting the budget and Mamdani's ability to actually pay for the services that those high earners pay taxes for. I'm talking about garbage collection. I'm talking about just the management of the city. What do you think happens here? How is this going to play out for New York?
Well, I think if you look at, history repeats itself. If you look at what happened to New York City under Mayor Lindsay in the 1970s, when there was all these strikes, garbage collection, and so forth, and the city became unlivable. What will happen is it costs a lot of money to run New York City. And as money becomes less and less available, they will cut services. They're going to have to, because they're not going to get a tax their way out of this. And what will happen is the quality of life will continue to diminish. And what you're seeing already is people are making choices not to be in New York City, not just to live there or to have a pied-à-terre there, but to even visit New York City and even spend their summers or their falls in New York. And so what's going to keep happening is that more and more people are going to stay away. And businesses are beginning to stay away because they're fearful that they'll be exposed to some new tax that the left wing comes up with. And I think if we see more of that, I think you're going to just see New York continue to struggle and the quality of life continue to diminish. I think the public will lose tolerance for this soon, though.
Yeah, real quick, Ashley.
No, hopefully. The number, this is actually, David, it's nice to see you. The number that's really struck me was how many people, over 100,000, maybe 120,000, that have left the public school system. That's really impacting the bottom line of people that live in New York because they're not getting the federal match. So that, to me, was a number that you brought up that I think is life-changing for the city.
Yeah, and interesting enough, also, what is it saying? It's saying that even the middle class is leaving. And that's a staggering thing. The reality is 45,000 taxpayers pay about half the cost to run New York City. And over the last 4 to 5 years, 20% of them have left. So if you start looking at that, that's already a 10% budget deficit that they're looking to fill. And that's why you see the pied-à-terre taxes and more taxes are coming. But ultimately, they're not even going to be able to run the public school system because it already poorly performs. And what's going to happen now is 120,000 less students, there'll be less resources. And it'll continue this nosedive. It's a perpetuating nosedive.
All right, we will leave it there and keep watching. Don, always great to get your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don Keeble's joining us. Quick break, and then more bizarre moments in the Big Apple. You will not believe who Mayor Zoran Mamdani decided to run.
All right, let's just do a market update. I did close out a trade just now. There's a big sell-off on natural gas. Natural gas is trading at 2.849. So I had a position. I closed it out. I don't know if it's going to continue to keep on going down. I'm looking very carefully at oil. Oil's trading at 79.66. It's testing that support level of 79.25. If it breaks, then oil will continue to fall. And the S&P 500 is trading at 7,559. It's relatively stable. VIX is stable, below 16. The dollar is stable at 114 relative to that's for the euro to the USD. And Japanese yen to the USD, 162.42. Bitcoin is at 64,600. So things are relatively stable, but there's a big move in natural gas. Also, there's been somewhat of a climb, but a little bit of a retracement on Gush. And that's trading right now at 35.32. So right now, I have a short on oil. I have a long position on natural gas, another short position on natural gas, and I have a another short position on oil at a different price point, and a long position on oil. So I have this hedge strategy, but I just closed one of my positions on natural gas, and I probably will be closing one shortly here on another position. So if you just pay attention to me, I stated this last session on what I was doing, and it takes a little bit of time. Sometimes you can do this multiple times in a day, but because of the Trump ramping up the war in the Middle East, there's a little bit of volatility in the energy sector, and it's hard to properly manage it under a Trump regime. So, but there's a big move in natural gas for the ones that have been playing along and positioning like I'm doing. All right, what I want to do is go to let's listen into CNN about FBI orders White House officials to surrender phones after internal leak.
If your fridge has any smell at all, you're breathing in bacteria and mold spores. Baking soda can't stop it. This is what's actually growing in there. My neighbor Carol works as a food safety manager for a restaurant chain. Last month, she opened my fridge and didn't say anything for about 5 seconds. Then she pointed at the box of baking soda on my shelf and said, "You know that stopped working 4 days after you put it in, right?" I didn't believe her. She said, "We've never used baking soda. It absorbs odor until it's full. Takes about 4 days. After that, it's furniture." Meanwhile, the bacteria and mold growing in the hidden parts of your fridge keep spreading. She pointed at my charcoal bag. Same thing. Same trick. Same 4-day.
Exclusive CNN reporting tonight on the investigation into leaks about security shortcomings of the new Air Force One. Last week, you'll remember, the president flew the old plane instead of the new one when he left the NATO summit. The White House claims it was so that U.S. service members could tour the new one. The New York Times said it was because the Qatari gifted plane lacked key defense systems, and the president was incensed by that reporting. Now we've learned some government officials have been asked to turn over their phones at the White House as part of a leak probe. CNN's Evan Paris joins us now with more. Evan, what more have you learned about this White House probe?
Yeah, this is an extraordinary scene at the White House last Friday where Kash Patel, the FBI director, and Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, essentially helped orchestrate what was hours-long numbers of people from the White House, people who may have known about the president's trip, were brought in, their devices were taken from them in some cases, and they were being questioned by FBI agents because of this leak hunt. The FBI, of course, is trying to figure out who in the government could have possibly leaked this information to the media. And the president, as you pointed out, John, is very, very much obsessed with this. And that, again, took place at the White House. We have a statement from the White House about this unusual scene. They said leaks that jeopardize the safety of the president, his staff, and traveling press pool are dangerous and a threat to national security. The White House takes these leaks seriously and will do everything legally to ensure the individual or individuals are caught and it does not happen again. That's, of course, from the White House this evening.
And we know the president was furious about this reporting, the disclosures. Is it easy enough to just connect the dots here? That's why the chief of staff and the FBI director are involved in this?
Right, no, it's not going to be very easy. And keep in mind, I mean, that's the reason why they issued those subpoenas to the New York Times reporters last week, because the president is very much focused on trying to figure out who could have leaked this information. It's a very unusual set of circumstances, again, because, you know, obviously the president is always mad at the press, but in this case, he took it very personally, the fact that he had to fly back on the old aircraft and not the new one that he was so proud of, John.
And the reporting by you and your colleagues on this has the FBI director not only involved, but going to the White House and setting up shop for a while. How unusual is this?
Oh my God, that is not done, right? First of all, the FBI director and the chief of staff of the White House would never be involved personally in an investigation, in part because if you do bring a prosecution, now they could possibly be witnesses in this investigation. So that's the first problem with this. You have competent career FBI agents who were doing this investigation. They were the ones who were, you know, would normally be doing the interviews and would normally be looking at the devices, looking at computers or anything like that to try to trace back who could have talked to reporters. So the fact that these two individuals were involved is highly, highly out of the ordinary.
John, in the reporting, at least one person refused to turn this over, is that correct?
And at least one person declined to turn it over, and we know that some agencies told their employees that they should call lawyers if they were asked to do so. So we will see where this leak hunt finally does turn up, John.
There is no blanket across the board privilege.
All right, I'm just gonna pause that clip. For the ones that are watching the dashboard on YouTube or my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, the oil future CL, you can see that it's hovering on that support line of 79.25. Right now it's trading at 79.59. If it breaks, we should see a downtick on oil. And if that does happen, I suspect that you'll also see a downtick on Gush. Right now, Gush is trading at 35.77, and you'll see a downtick on UCO.
Between reporters and their sources. And we know that because that direct question was raised a long time ago in 1972 to the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled back then, 5-4, there is no privilege for those communications the way there would be, for example, between an attorney and a client, or in some instances, a doctor and a patient. That said, it is not open season for DOJ and the FBI to subpoena reporters. There are cases, and there's DOJ's own internal guidance that says that kind of subpoena should be an extraordinary measure. That's a quote, used as a quote, last resort, only if necessary for an urgent national security measure. And so I would expect this case with the New York Times to go to court, and I think they're going to litigate whether those criteria have been met.
The person who brought this whole thing to everyone's attention was Donald Trump. He was the first person that ate.
This box is the smartest thing I've done for my family's future. But I finally decided to try the original knock box, and it changed everything. It's not just a regular box. It has 15 categories and 67 folders. So I've got everything covered. Insurance policies, legal documents, passwords, even information about my pet. Each folder has a checklist so I don't miss a single detail. And this right here, the knock list, will guide my family to find everything important. Don't be one of those people that leaves your family even more stressed during a difficult time. Get your knock box today.
Why are you still using bots for your meetings? How else am I going to remember what happened? Just use granola. Okay, what's granola? With granola, you get all the benefits of an...
Donald Trump. He was the first person at 8:42 a.m. on July 8th to send out a Truth Social post that says, for old time's sake, I will be taking the old Air Force One from Turkey to Mildenhall, and he says the new Air Force One is going to go ahead. So he touched off this whole thing.
Right. Listen, I am really big on press freedom. I do not like this crackdown where they have people going to reporters' houses in particular. I'm really nervous about this idea of Kash Patel sitting in the White House collecting phones for the administration because they're embarrassed. This is not the first administration to do this. And it really worries me from a press freedom perspective as to what presidents will do in order to crack down on leakers. It's a real problem. It is a press problem that is bigger than any one administration. Trump is doing a bad thing now, but he's not the first, and we need to deal with the fact that the president cannot pressure reporters to give up sources. Full stop.
Yeah. The Times has asked, by the way, just now tonight, to
let's get this straight. The safety of everyone on the plane was at risk because of a leak from a reporter. And they can't find out, the government can't find out, according to him, that the government shouldn't find out who that leaker was. We're talking about a national security incident here. See, maybe these journalists need to actually start thinking about, should they publish this or not? Especially if it's a national security issue, where everyone on the plane was at risk now.
These subpoenas of its journalists. But yeah, you're right, Charles. I mean, he's not the first president. He's probably not even the president who's used the subpoena power the most. But I think the part of this that is so just interesting and very Trumpian is that he's embarrassed about the plane. He rushed a $400 million retrofit of a plane, and it wasn't ready for prime time, and now he's embarrassed. That's what this is about.
He's not only embarrassed, I mean, the plane was never going to be secure enough and to allow the time that it would need to retrofit it completely. I mean, the comm system that goes into Air Force One, the evasion systems that it has on board, that's just not going to be possible to install. And so the president, while he was really proud about touting this plane, he totally was embarrassed. And that's why he's cracking down and trying to figure out the leaks of where this all came from. But the reality is that there's so many people that are involved in what it takes to have Air Force One take off, from the advanced staff on the ground to people in the White House.
In the final analysis, a reporter did something they shouldn't have done.
To the military. It can come from anywhere, and it's something probably as small as the plane's just not secure. And then it becomes, you know, a story that is widely reported. And so I share Charles's concern about crackdown of press freedoms. We certainly dealt with leaks in the Biden White House and the Biden administration that were concerning and sometimes dealt with issues of national security, but you can't clamp down on freedom of the press either.
You know, I think Charles is right about most presidents just not wanting to deal with leaks to the press. And I remember the Obama administration was incredibly aggressive. And I understand why. And for me, I don't know where I land on this, because in one vein, I don't want national security issues being printed or written about. But on your show, when we first talked about this plane, that was my biggest reason to be against it, because I was worried about the president's safety on a plane from the Qataris. I don't know what the hell is going on with Boeing. It's taking them way too long to finish these planes.
Isn't this actually to Boeing's, into Boeing's defense? They have to actually make things secure. They can't cut corners.
They can't with Abby. They're behind, though. They're behind.
But that's my point, is that it is not an easy thing to do. It takes time.
No, it does.
Yeah, there are going to be delays, but Trump wants a quick fix. And yeah, I mean, I think that actually there is a strong argument to be made that it is in the public interest to know.
Well,
but I just wonder, Charles, what's the line for if you don't?
Presidents on this plane, right? If there are going to be presidents on this plane, and they want to make it seem like the plane is safe, but the plane is not safe.
What's the line?
Two things. One, it strikes me that this White House is taking far more consequences to find out who leaked information about this plane, which I feel like, to your point, Donald Trump blabbed all about, than they did with Signalgate, for example, which to me seems like a far more serious concern of national security. And also, it's Trump who told us he wasn't going to be on the new Air Force One. It's Trump who told us the Israelis had told them that the Iranians were targeting him. It's Trump who can't shut up about being the #1 target of the Iranians. So maybe somebody should go look at his phone and his mouth.
I want to get on to international affairs now, because Donald Trump has warned of a major escalation in the conflict with Iran, threatening to wipe out Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Here's the latest.
Amazing. Amazing. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. This will help to detoxify your body, help to get rid of heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. It'll bind to them, allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. And by detoxifying your body, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system and your other organ systems. Really important. This type of zeolite you can take every day. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, and voila, you're detoxifying your body. Also, clean your environment. Make sure that the cleaning supplies and the paints and the chemicals, the pesticides that you may have in your home, if you have to have them, make sure they're in a double layered container to reduce degassing. Because if you don't, what happens is you're breathing those in small concentrations all day long. So make sure you clean your environment and detoxify your body. Please go to my store and get the zeolite. I also have a great stack here that will help to slow down the aging process. Ashwagandha root controls cortisol levels and brings down your blood glucose levels. So you're helping your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Turmeric will help to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals. And lignans also soaks up free radicals, brings down inflammation, helps the endocrine system and your immune system. When you stack these together, what's going to happen is you're reducing plaque formation, so you're helping your cardiovascular system, you're bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals so the neurons are healthier, so your brain function is going to be better. If you have chronic inflammation at the brain level, you get amyloidosis and early onset of dementia. In addition, by taking this, you will recover quicker after a workout. And taking this stack, you're going to help your immune system and your endocrine system. And so what will happen is you're going to have more energy and you're going to be slowing down the aging process. And by doing this regularly, by doing this every day, you're going to have that compound effect where as you're aging, you're reducing the methylation of your genes. When you do that, you are slowing down the epigenetic change of your genetic profile because of aging. You want to slow that down. You want to slow down the aging process. You want to slow down the methylation process. And when you do that, you will have a higher concentration of youthful gene expression. Therefore, your methylation will be less. Your epigenetics, when you take a look at them, if you do a test, will show that you're younger. In addition, your system, your different organ systems and the tissues will have cells that are repopulating in the tissue for tissues that can regenerate, where the telomere lengths will be longer. So your telomere length age will be youthful, and your methylation age will be youthful by just doing this stack. Now, if you follow what I do, and I take this plus some other stuff, you're radically slowing down and taking in all the ingredients that you need to slow down that aging process. And it's a holistic approach. So it's the proper supplementation, the proper stack, proper sleep, eating properly, drinking filtered water, staying away from sugary foods and processed foods, stretching, balancing exercises to activate that cerebellum, doing resistance training and some cardio. You want to be heavier on the resistance training. When you do all of these things, you're slowing down the aging process and helping yourself to just have more vitality, let alone longevity. And it's a very simple concept. Bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, boost up energy levels. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lignans, the turmeric, and the ashwagandha root. You can take them separately, but I highly recommend that you take them together. And what will happen over time is that you'll be methylating your genes less, and you are going to have tissues that will have longer telomere lengths because of regeneration of the tissue. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Let's listen in to U.S. expands strikes into northern Iran.
Welcome back in, and we want to pivot gears now and continue talking about the ongoing conflict over in Iran as the U.S. airstrikes hit northern Iran as it disables ships trying to run the blockade. The United States intensified its strikes targeting Iran early Thursday, hitting targets further north as American forces also fired into a ship it accused of trying to break its naval blockade on the Islamic Republic. Iran retaliated with missile and drone fire targeting Bahrain and Kuwait before dawn. And this is some of the latest video that we are getting here, where you can see those unclassified videos now and those strikes taking place there on your screen from early Thursday. Now, days of back and forth strikes by the United States and Iran across the Middle East and renewed threats to the Strait of Hormuz have shredded the interim deal to end the Iran war and could tip the region back into all-out war. Already, Iranian officials say U.S. strikes have killed more than 35 people and wounded more than 300 others. Strikes also reached into areas around Iran's capital, Tehran, for the first time of this latest round of violence. When the U.S. and Israel launched the war on Iran on February 28, Tehran effectively closed the strait to shipping traffic. I do want to bring you out now to a live look there of the Strait of Hormuz that we have here, courtesy of marine traffic, as we continue to read off some of the latest here that we are getting from these overnight strikes, a move that sent the price of oil, fertilizer, and many other goods soaring far beyond the region and gave Iran major leverage in negotiations, according to AP News. Now, the U.S. and Iran trade threats as attacks intensify as those rising prices pose a particular challenge to U.S. President Donald Trump and his Republican Party, which hopes to retain control of Congress in the elections in November. But Washington has struggled to successfully reopen the waterway, leading to President Trump reimposing the naval blockade Wednesday. Iran's parliament speaker and lead negotiator said Iran was prepared for a fuller military confrontation if the U.S. does not live up to the terms of the interim deal. And Iran's Parliamentary Revolutionary Guard threatened to halt all energy exports from the Middle East over the blockade, saying, quote, "The export of oil and gas from the region will be either for everyone or for no one," the guard said. Trump again insisted Iran was ready to strike a peace deal, but he did not elaborate, saying, quote, they don't like what we're doing, and they do want to settle. We'll find out whether or not we settle with them or we just finish them off, he said Wednesday at the U.S. Army War College in Pennsylvania. We do have this ex-post here from Central Command. I want to bring this up on your screen. It says U.S. forces struck Iranian command centers, air defense sites, missile and drone capabilities, and coastal surveillance facilities to further degrade Iran's ability to threaten innocent mariners crewing commercial vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM used precision munitions to hit targets in multiple locations, including Bandar Abbas. The U.S. military is holding Iran accountable at the commander-in-chief's discretion. So just some of the latest that we're bringing you there when it comes to those ongoing developments between the United States and Iran. With that, we do have to sign away for our final commercial break here of the hour.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. This has all the vitamins and minerals that you need, but other supplements are in this. It has 68 nutrients to help improve your organ systems and slow down the aging process. Take this every day. Now, this will help with brain function, musculature, cardiovascular system, immune system, help with your endocrine system, rev up your metabolism, increase your energy levels, improve your concentration. You'll sleep better. This is very powerful. Take it every day, and this will help to slow down the aging process. Now, what I recommend is take this with the C60 Max 35 Cleanse, the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and also the probiotics. When you do that, you're covering all the bases to, as the core, to slow down that aging process. And you can add stuff to that, like omega-3 or resveratrol or clarity factor. This is very powerful. Take it every day. It's a month's supply. Now, the barleys can be stacked with the Boomer Boost, or you can take them separately. Now, Gladiator barley, and then there's one called heirloom barley. Now, heirloom barley, it's another way to detoxify your body regularly, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. So what this will do is help your immune system, your endocrine system, cardiovascular system, even brain function, because keeping inflammation down helps your brain, right? Super important. And detoxifying regularly is important. It's a month's supply. Now, you'll also notice that you'll recover quicker after a workout, and it also helps your joint health because it's keeping the inflammation down. There's an inflammation enzyme when you have arthritis called EP4. You want to kind of block that. So bringing down inflammation is really important for joint health. Gladiator barley. You get all the benefits of heirloom barley, but one extra, and that is to help to build muscle if you do resistance training. And this stacks really well with the myotrol, which helps with gene expression. Now, you can take the Gladiator barley separately, or you can stack it with the Boomer Boost. It's a great stack, especially if you're trying to build some muscle. Another great stack, if you're not concerned with building muscle, is to take the heirloom barley and the Boomer Boost. So it's a great way to get healthy, to control your BMI, to control your blood glucose levels. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the heirloom barley or the Gladiator barley if you want to build some muscle. And the Boomer Boost is a great stack to slow down the aging process. With the Boomer Boost, again, you get the vitamins and the minerals and the other supplementations that you need to slow down the aging process. And it's very simple. Soak up free radicals, keep the inflammation down, boost up the energy levels. And when you do that on a regular basis, you're going to see that your organ systems are performing better because you're methylating less and you are allowing less stress in your tissues, so the telomere lengths are more, and therefore if you want to use a age indication, biological age indication, you will notice that your tissues would be actually younger than your chronological age. You have a chronological age based on your birth date, but you also have a biological age, and each organ system has a different age based on telomere length or methylation of your genes. If you follow my protocol, you'll actually be younger at the telomere length and the methylation method of age of the different tissues. Some people out there may have a liver that's 80 years old because of poor lifestyle or genetics, and they're only 50. Or you could be a 50-year-old and have a liver that's 20 years old because of lifestyle and taking the proper supplementation and all this. So organ systems do have different ages. in your body. So if you are applying a routine to slow down the aging process, you want to target all these different systems. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. U.S. strikes tanker in Strait of Hormuz. Just happened 24 minutes ago.
First, however, that battlefield is getting bigger by the day. The U.S. expanding airstrikes into northern Iran as well as the Strait of Hormuz. The president weighing new options to try and bring the regime to its knees. And how do you do that in the end? Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday. Let's get to it. I'm Bill Hemmer. Hello to you.
Hello. Good morning. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. The conflict in Iran is entering this new phase. For the first time, the U.S. striking targets near the capital of Tehran. The Iranians are retaliating with attacks on America's regional allies.
So at the same time, the U.S. enforcing its naval blockade. Yesterday, American forces opened fire on an oil tanker that tried to get through. We shot a missile down the smokestack. The U.S. says the boat ignored multiple warnings to stop.
Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reporting the president is leaning toward expanding military operations in Iran. Here's what he said yesterday.
The Islamic Republic of Iran is not happy right now. Should have been done 47 years ago, and they want to settle so badly. They don't like what we're doing. And they do want to settle. We'll find out whether or not we settle with them or we just finish it off.
Mike Tobin, live from Tel Aviv this morning. Hi, Mike.
And Dana, with the blockade now active, the U.S. has been on the offensive. As you mentioned, one ship has been fired on. This is a tanker flagged out of Curacao named the Belma. The U.S. says the big ship was headed toward Iran's primary oil hub, Harangue Island. The ship ignored multiple warnings, so U.S. aircraft fired multiple Hellfire missiles into the smokestack. Two tankers were turned around the previous day. The U.S. has also fired deeper into Iran than it had previously in this round of fighting. This comes from Iran state media, so it's not confirmed by the U.S., but air defenses near Tehran triggered yesterday. Also, barracks for Iran's 388 Mechanized Infantry Division were hit. The town is Aranchar to the southeast. That brigade operated tanks and armored vehicles. All the public statements we get from Iran are defiant.
The criminal United States continues its lawlessness and its efforts to destabilize the region. First, we once again stress that under no circumstances and in no way will we allow the United States, as a foreign and extra-regional country, to interfere in the Strait of Hormuz. This is Iran's inviolable red line.
A woman with dual U.S.-Iran citizenship has been released from Iranian captivity. Dena Karari was arrested while visiting family back in 2024 and charged with espionage. She's been released. Her lawyer posted that she's traveling back to the U.S. and grateful to President Trump for her release. And Iran has once again been firing at its neighbors. The Petra news agency out of Jordan says that 8 hostile aircraft
now,
were intercepted. Iran said,
what is very interesting, a few episodes ago, I believe it was last week, I stated that with that MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, it didn't say anything about hostages. Why were the individuals within the Trump administration not talking about hostages? Now, how I became aware of the hostages in Iran was actually from a former hostage that was released, and he did a lecture that I saw about his experience. And he mentioned, you know what? It's very strange that the Trump administration is not talking about the current hostages that are there. And that he thought that the administration needs to use the MOU and this ceasefire as a means to get the hostages back. Now, I said this a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago. And nobody in the news was talking about this. Nobody. And then all of a sudden, the MOU collapses, and what do we have? A hostage release. Now, why is it that the media didn't ask questions to the Trump administration during the press or during the Pentagon press briefings, or even with the gaggle with the president. I don't remember any of them asking this question. Now, maybe they did and I missed it, but for sure, the media didn't say anything about this woman that was a hostage. You would think that it should have been part of the discussion since the war started. Once again, I talk about something and 2 weeks later, the mainstream media starts talking about it. They're always behind. The mainstream media is always behind. We saw this 1,000 times because of the crisis of 2020, because they're just too stupid. They're too stupid, too slow.
These were drones and they were fired at U.S. bases in Jordan. Dana, back to you.
All right, Mike. Tobin, thank you so much.
So Rebecca Heinrichs, senior fellow Hudson Institute. Rebecca, welcome back here. There's a lot to get to. I'll frame it as best I can. We reached deep inside Iran in the past 24 hours, near the capital city of Tehran. At the same time, Iran's saying that their invincible red line is the Strait of Hormuz and the Americans will not control it. So where are we now, Rebecca?
Well, the United States does control the Strait of Hormuz. It's just that the Iranians are able to terrorize the strait and prevent some shipping to go through because of insurance rates, all the things that we know that makes shipping companies nervous to go through. However, the Iranians understand that by their shooting into the Strait of Hormuz, this is a paradox for them because it's making the Arab states create other land routes so that the Strait of Hormuz's value diminishes over time. So we should expect the Iranians to continue to try to inflict as much pain over the strait while they can in the short term, as long as the United States continues to degrade Iran's coastal capabilities. And as you see, President Trump's initiating strikes deeper into Iranian territory, taking out their industry, their ability to produce these weapons. The United States still has the leverage and time is on our side.
Okay, let's listen to President Trump on the possibility of what could happen to the IRGC if they don't negotiate.
I wanted to ask you, Mr. President, about Iran and on Iran. You came to the conclusion that you couldn't negotiate with the IRGC. Does that mean that you might wipe them out like you did ISIS?
Yeah, it does. We will see what's happening. We received a call just as I was coming here that they want to meet. They always want to meet. But, this should have been done by other presidents for many years, for 47 years, but really a lot longer than that, and it wasn't. And I never understood why, but now I do. Because if you're not going to do it the way I'm doing it, you're never going to make a deal with them.
So the IRGC is basically like a tiger that can't change its stripes.
That's right. And I was encouraged to hear President Trump talk this way. He also, remember the memorandum of understanding we talked about, it only lasted 3 weeks. And when President Trump described the failure of the MOU, he said, look, this was a test. And it was a generous test. The United States lifted the blockade, waived sanctions on oil. So the Iranians had all of this right up front. And they still shot missiles into 6 different American allied countries and fired at American Navy ships. And according to U.S. Central Command, they have killed or wounded almost a dozen innocent civilians as they tried to traverse the strait. So President Trump is making it very clear that he understands that the IRGC cannot be negotiated with. And remember, we just saw the funeral procession of the Supreme Leader in which the IRGC threatened assassination against President Trump. And so President Trump is clear that they cannot be negotiated with, but he can still have punishing military consequences against them.
Okay, so also there was news from overnight that an American woman was being held by the Iranians. I don't know how many people were aware of this story, but Truth Social, here's the post. Iran has allowed an American citizen wrongfully detained in December of 2024 under the presidency of sleepy Joe Biden to leave the country. She's now safely outside of Iran and in good condition. The United States of America appreciates this gesture of goodwill by Iran.
Now, I said this, there was an issue, and there's more hostages that no one's talking about. Why did the mainstream media stay silent on this? Why? I'm starting to believe that all they do is read a teleprompter and they don't think. There's no real investigative journalism that's truly happening. Question 1, how many hostages are there? Question 2, what are we doing to get them back? Question 3, why don't we just level Tehran?
Was Dina Karari, a U.S. Iranian citizen who runs a nonprofit, and she had been charged of espionage. Why this overture?
Well, so first of all, we're always thankful as Americans that you get any American hostage back home. These were trumped up charges. She's an innocent person. But typically the Iranians, I mean, they've been engaging in this hostage taking since 1979. And they do it to get concessions out of the United States. We don't know if the United States paid for her release, but we could imagine that the Iranians are trying to assuage President Trump's fury because he has been expanding these military operations, so potentially trying to get President Trump not to be so angry, give him some kind of win. But the Iranians only give hostages if they have more hostages held back, and they do in this case, Bill. They've got 5 Americans are still held hostage in Iran. Again, remember, the MOU failed because the Iranians could not help themselves but
this
terrorize
is the first time I've heard this since the war begun with Iran and the United States. We have 5 hostages. A president should say, Iran, give us the hostages. Or we're going to level your capital. You have 72 hours. 72 hours clicks by, they don't believe the threat, you level Tehran with gravity bombs. You don't need to use expensive warheads like Tomahawk missiles and that kind of weaponry. B-52 bomber, dropping gravity bombs, level Tehran. And then they'll pay attention. Because the ones that are running the show in Tehran, the ones that are running the show in Iran, they don't know anything but force. Why? Because they're thugs. And this is the reason why we're in the problem that we're in. And Trump being the taco guy, Trump always chickens out, has only exacerbated the problem. So what do we need to do? Stop being taco and start killing.
The result of the failure of the MOU rests only with the Iranians. So now it seems to me with this hostage release, they're just trying to get President Trump to potentially hold back on some of these military strikes. I don't think it's going to work.
Rebecca Heinrichs, thank you for being with us this morning, kicking off the show.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Please go to my store at the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the omega-3. This will help with your cardiovascular health. You should be taking this like now, all right? I don't care what your age is or how healthy you are. Taking omega-3 is going to help with your cardiovascular health. Brings down inflammation, helps to control the lipid profile, and helps to reduce over stickiness of your red blood cells to prevent overclotting. Vitamin B complex, if you're 40 years of age or older, take it every day, male or female, doesn't matter. The first 4 B vitamins helps to boost up your ATP, which is a major energy source. And guess what? When you get older, you have less ATP. So maybe boosting up your ATP levels actually helps to reduce aging. Now, vitamin B complex also revs up your metabolism. What happens when you get older? Most people start getting fat. Most people have a lower metabolism. Maybe you should be taking supplements that actually revs up your metabolism so you don't age as fast. And vitamin B complex, there's vitamin B12, so it protects your neurons. And guess what? A lot of people that are getting older, they have gait issues, they have thinking problems. Maybe you should be taking vitamin B12 to protect your neurons so you don't have these problems. Vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 helps with gene expression. It also helps to boost up your immune system. It helps to get rid of cells that are infected. It helps to get those cells to go into apoptosis. Vitamin D3 also helps to build denser bone. People that are getting older, guess what? Your immune system isn't as functional. Maybe you should take vitamin D3 to help that. Your bone density starts to go down when you get older. Maybe you should do some resistance training and take vitamin D3 and take a calcium supplement. You know, you can reverse aging. Clarity factor. Should be taking this every day. Why? Because it gets rid of that brain fog, so you're thinking. You're going to be able to concentrate, and over time what's going to happen is you'll have better dendritic connections. Your neurons will be connected better. You're going to be thinking faster, and you're going to have better memory. This will help with brain function. And guess what? When you get older, your brain function starts to decline. You actually start declining brain function at age 30, 35. It's just asymptomatic, usually. Once you hit 50, you start feeling the symptoms of it, where your memory starts to fade, your concentration starts to go down, your sleep pattern starts to change. All these things happen, but you can stop that. And the earlier that you focus on brain health, the better you are. Because once the neurons are dead, too late. So it behooves you to listen to me. Focus on keeping those dendritic connections robust. Take the clarity factor. So everything I just said would help to slow down the aging process. Clarity factor helps with brain function. Vitamin B complex revs up that metabolism, boosts up those energy levels, and protects the neuron. Vitamin D3 helps with osteopenia and osteoporosis. And omega-3 boosts up and helps your cardiovascular system. And when you have better blood flow to your brain, don't you think your brain will be healthier? The answer is yes. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and just listen to me. Take these every day. And guess what? You're going to live a better life. Unless you get hit by a bus.
Audience that I promised I would put to you, and it's from GameStop shareholders. A lot of GameStop shareholders have asked about the warrants that expire in October. You know, another recent or relatively recent financial transaction from the company. What should they expect happens with those warrants between now and in October of this year?
I don't have a crystal ball. I can't answer that question.
Okay. Their expectation is that when they expire, I think the date October 26th, is that's the outcome.
Ed, people that have invested alongside me when it comes to Chewy or GameStop and me committing $500 million into eBay, they've done very, very well. So I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict the future, nor can anyone that I've ever met. But GameStop is a business that was on the brink of bankruptcy, and everybody was betting against it for good reason. And now the company is making more money than it's ever made in its history.
All right, that was Ryan Cohen. He is the GameStop CEO speaking with Bloomberg Tech anchor Ed Ludlow in a wide-ranging interview about a variety of topics, but particularly the GameStop's intention or expectation that it would like to buy eBay.
Right, and the interesting news that eBay has not responded at all to that offer. And Ryan Cohen sees his offer as one that adds value and points to his track record at Chewy and at GameStop.
Always an interesting interview with Mr. Cohen. All right, let's get a reset of these markets, so we can do that with a Bloomberg Business Flash with Charlie.
All right, I thank you very much. And here's what's going on. We got GameStop up by 0.9%. eBay shares, they are in the red. We've got eBay tumbling now by 1.1%. And this Bloomberg Business Flash is brought to you by Golden Crest Metals. Inflation, tariffs, and volatility have some investors turning to gold for stability. To get a free gold and silver info guide, learn how to add metals to your IRA or 401k, tax and penalty free.
Don't buy into the whole gold stupid. That's so dumb. It's so dumb. If you take a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, 50-year analysis of the S&P 500, all right, and you look at the performance of gold. You would have made more money in equities than in gold. Now, you can use gold as a means for hedging, but you can do that with treasuries. Now, people are saying, you really think that the treasury market for the United States is going to implode and that the United States would default? Because if they did, your little gold position won't mean anything. And if gold was so precious, why are people selling it? You ever wonder that? Oh, you're so smart that you'll be buying gold. You're so smart. And the person selling it is so dumb. Really? Maybe it's the other way around. This whole run to the hills with gold doesn't work. You're only hurting yourself. There's other ways to do it, like Texas tea, oil. Because gold doesn't run the world, but energy does. Energy does.
As well. Abbott Laboratories stock is soaring today, the most since 2002. I guess the street liked their earnings for the second quarter and probably more importantly, their guidance going forward. Let's check in with the analyst who covers ABT, Matt Hendrickson, senior equity analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Matt, talk to us about Abbott Laboratories and what they disclosed here in the earnings release.
Yeah, this earnings was a huge sigh of relief for investors. They went into the call, some headwinds or some headwind risks were in the nutrition segment, and that was going to be dilutive to the overall growth. There was also questions about the CGM market, which is their core growth driver, continuous glucose monitors.
Oh, that's just, I see on people's arms.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like a little like the size of a quarter on the arm.
Yeah.
That's a $10 billion revenue run rate for the company. There was some concerns that it was decelerating growth from kind of the mid-teens, high teens from last year to below high single digits this year. Basically, their results kind of calmed all those nerves. Nutrition is recovering nicely after they implemented new pricing mechanics into their business model. The CGM business, growing at 9.5%, kind of slightly below the double-digit expectations that management had. But overall, it wasn't worse than what was expected. So we eliminated that worst case scenario.
Okay. We're going to go to a clip dealing with Besant delivers remarks on far-left political terrorism. Interesting, the Treasury Department Secretary is talking about that. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Myotrol. If you're 40 years of age or older, male or female, take Myotrol, do some resistance training. This will help to build muscle and reduce atrophy. Really important. Now, Myotrol has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle. When you get older, you can't produce muscle as easily because your gene expression has changed. And I keep on saying, if you follow my protocol, you'll have youthful gene expression. So please go to my store, get the Myotrol. This will help to build muscle and maintain it, and also help the health of your mitochondria so you have the energy to maintain your muscles. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll benefit from this. And you get even more benefits, no matter what age you are, if you take the Myotrol with the Gladiator Barley and do some resistance training. And to help with brain function, Good Night Formula. This will allow you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep so you consolidate your memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and be well rested. When you do that regularly, guess what? You have better brain function. You slow down the aging process. It's really simple. Please go to my store, get the Good Night Formula. It has tryptophan, melatonin, passion flower, and GABA.
Stop calling me. You sound like a psycho, I swear to God.
I'm calling you to let you know that we're going to pay off every loan you have. Like, it's literally a good thing.
Good morning. And before I proceed, I'm going to go off script for a minute, which is always dangerous, but I'm going to remind everyone in this room and all the media that I was the subject of an assassination attempt February 2024 by a
addled left-wing activists 2 hours after being sworn into my job. So any of you who want to report that this is fiction and does not exist, be there for the sentencing this August. So good morning. Thank you, Secretary Rubio, for convening this ministerial and for the invitation to be here. We are here together because a resurgence of political terrorism, transnational in design, and far-left in doctrine is no longer the concern of any one nation. It demands a response that draws upon the distinct and combined strengths of every government represented here today. Every government. Ours begins where every campaign of terror does. Its financial lifeblood. And at President Trump's direction, the United States Treasury is bringing the full weight of our authorities to defend the integrity of the U.S. global financial systems. More than 20 years ago, in the wake of 9/11, Treasury became the first finance ministry in the world to establish an office dedicated to disrupting the funding networks of terrorist organizations. Treasury's Office of Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, referred to as TFI, was created in recognition of the reality that America's financial system is essential to its national security. TFI's mandate to identify, disrupt, and disable illicit foreign funds that threaten our homeland has become one of the Treasury's defining responsibilities. And today, we are extending that abiding mission to meet an evolving threat. The resurgence of organized political terrorism has long occupied a blind spot. The international community has struggled to identify this danger, much less defeat it. But as the threat of terrorism evolves, the institution and tools that defend against it must adapt. We once understood terrorism principally as an external menace that is no longer the world we inhabit. Increasingly, we are confronting sophisticated, organized networks that cross borders to incite violence within them. Meanwhile, old ideological boundaries are now giving way to new operational alliances. The unified front between international Marxism and radical Islamic movements need not share the same ultimate vision to share the same immediate enemy of free and self-governing societies. That convergence should concern every government represented in this room. These terrorists understand an enduring truth. Societies are rarely subverted from afar until they have first been weakened from within. So as it tears at the social fabric that allows our societies to function, left-wing terrorism.
This is what I've been saying for a long time. We have a system of government and an economic system that is predicated on the Enlightenment, especially from John Locke. It's about life, liberty, and property. We have a constitutional republic that is anchored to the Enlightenment. And those pillars of our society are resting on that foundation: God, country, and family. Now, when you look at the ultra-lib, when you look at this, the democratic socialists or the far left, they want to erode that foundation because they don't believe in the Enlightenment. They believe in a postmodernism. They believe in relativism. They believe in socialism. They believe in communism. They don't believe in life, liberty, and property rights. They want to take away your life if you don't agree with them. They don't want to give you liberties. They want to take them away for top-down control. And they sure as hell don't believe in property because look at what's happening in New York. They want to take away your property. Everything about the democratic socialists is antithetical to the Enlightenment. And if you are a true patriot that is about God, country, and family, about the Enlightenment, about a constitutional republic, then you need to step up and use your skills to stop them, to stop the ultra-lib. cancer. And cancer has to be dug out.
Is a visible manifestation of a much broader and more insidious effort to undermine the philosophies that built Western civilization and sustain all we hold dear. Some of these activities are overt.
This is the AC device my team spent 3 years building because every air conditioner on the market kept letting people down. Every cooling solution has the same fundamental flaw, and nobody was fixing it. You see,
some of these activities are overt. Bombings, assassinations, and organized violence in our streets. Others are quieter. Campaigns to suppress speech, intimidate political opposition, and sabotage our national institutions. Of course, whatever form they take, none of these attacks sustain themselves. Violence requires money, channels through which funding can move, and institutions behind which it can hide. Increasingly, legitimate nonprofit and charitable structures are being exploited as a mechanism to conceal the movement of illicit funds to support political terrorism. For Treasury, the application of our authorities to combat these networks represents the natural evolution of our mission. Through our Office of Foreign Assets Control, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and IRSCI, we have spent decades developing the world's most sophisticated financial counterterrorism capabilities. And now we are mobilizing some of the same tools that we have deployed against terrorists abroad to confront this emerging threat here at home. Like every form of illicit finance, these networks rely on the global financial system. It is our mandate to deny terrorist groups access to those channels. Now, we think of nonprofits and charities as good, altruistic organizations, and most of them are. We think they represent the very best of civil society. Many of them do. But the very qualities that make these institutions worthy of the public's trust can also make them appealing to those who endeavor to exploit them. At President Trump's direction, Treasury is expanding its efforts to identify organizations that abuse charitable and nonprofit structures as vehicles for illicit finance. We are examining where tax-exempt status has been exploited, where charitable entities have become financial conduits for foreign influence activity, and how those entrusted with stewardship of these organizations have instead enabled violence. Where the evidence leads, we will not hesitate to follow. And of course, we will hold these organizations, officers, directors accountable. And just as financial institutions must know their clients, they must know their grantees. That work is well underway. In the fall, the United States designated 4 far-left Antifa extremist groups abroad as foreign terrorist organizations, denying them access to the U.S. financial system and depriving them of resources they need to carry out attacks. Meanwhile, in this administration alone, OFAC has also sanctioned 17 sham charities and nonprofit organizations for funding Hamas's terrorist activities and operations. As Treasury continues to map and disrupt the flow of funding that enables these entities to operate, no terror organization should delude itself into the belief that its financing lies beyond our reach. No facilitator should assume that anonymity confers impunity, and no jurisdiction should expect to enable or harbor these activities without consequence. To be clear, in the fight against domestic terrorism, we must respect the constitutional rights, freedom of speech, association, and assembly of all Americans. As such, it is important to emphasize that Treasury will act based on suspected unlawful conduct by these terror organizations, not because of their beliefs or ideologies. At Treasury, this work is mission critical, but we cannot do it alone. The threat is transnational. Our response must be no less so. Indeed, our cooperation must be as disciplined as the networks we seek to dismantle. The global financial system is one of the great achievements of the modern world, and we never must allow it to become a sanctuary for those who seek to subvert it. So on behalf of the United States Treasury, let there be no uncertainty about the work before us and the resolve with which we will undertake it. We will identify illicit funding, however artfully it is concealed. We will dismantle the networks that sustain political terrorism, however respectable their fronts may be. We will pursue those who enable political violence, however distant their jurisdictions, and we will deepen our collaboration with every nation represented in this room for as long as this work requires. This is our commitment, and we ask that you make yours too. Secretary Rubio, thank you again for convening us here this morning. Let us work together to translate the spirit of this ministerial into a commitment that endures well beyond it. And let us deny our adversaries the one thing on which they count most, that those of us assembled in this room will grow weary in our cooperation before they do. Thank you all for being here today, and the U.S. Treasury looks forward to working with you. Thank you.
Powerful statement. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the collagen. This will help with your skin, nails, hair, health, also help with your musculature, joints, and bone density. Very important. It's a month's supply. Take it every day. Resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression, helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence, helps to boost up the health of your mitochondria. It soaks up free radicals. You'll have more energy, and it helps the basal layer of your skin, so you look younger. But not only that, you're helping with that youthful gene expression. This stacks really well with C60. Digestive enzyme complex, super important to reduce the load on your pancreas. They'll help you to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. You'll be able to absorb your nutrients easier, less load on your digestive system. It helps your pancreas. And by doing that, you're going to be able to have your digestive system heal. A lot of people's digestion is terrible. Now, a big part of it is that they're not eating properly. You need to have a balanced diet, stay away from processed foods. Processed foods causes havoc to your digestive system. So proper diet and proper supplementation. Digestive enzyme complex has the enzymes to help you digest the carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids that you consume. In addition is bromelain, and bromelain also helps to break up clots. And it has the proteolytic enzymes that helps to break up glycoproteins. Super important during the cold season. So it behooves you to take this and help with your digestion and help with your pancreatic health. If you're 40 years of age or older, male or female, your pancreas doesn't function as well as when you were younger. So please go to my store and get the digestive enzyme complex. Use discount 5, get $5 off. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Let's take a look at some more clips here that's going on. How stems deal. All right, this is Trump leaning towards escalating Iran war. This is the Wall Street Journal.
Hey, before you skip this ad, this is John Ossoff in Georgia. And I'm the only Democratic U.S. Senator running for re-election in a state that does.
The U.S. launched new strikes on Iran for a sixth straight day, and Tehran retaliated, targeting assets in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed, and Iran is now threatened to threatening to close other oil and gas export routes to the officials tell the Wall Street Journal Trump is leaning towards expanding military options in Iran, is now threatening to close other oil and gas export routes that the U.S. relies on. Meanwhile, U.S. officials tell the Wall Street Journal Trump is leaning towards expanding military options in Iran. His options include stepping up airstrikes and even sending in ground forces to seize islands near the Strait. Joining me now to discuss, Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, a retired commander of U.S. Army Europe, and MS Now military analyst Peter and Laura still with us. General, what do you make of the president's reported leaning towards expanding operations, especially with the options I just laid out?
Well, the other day, Stephanie, when he talked about the 20% tariff, I kind of went into a drill with a couple other people in terms of determining the troop-to-task requirements of that. And what I mean by that is any mission the military gets, they immediately start looking at how to allocate forces for that. And it would be massive. If you're talking about a smaller element, perhaps to actually conduct an amphibious landing, as an example, on an island, or looking at securing the shoreline to try and prevent any kind of drones or missiles coming in, it's still an awesome task in terms of the number of forces you would need. You know, what I keep pointing out to folks is Russia has been using air power against Ukraine now for 4 years. Some of their attacks have included up to 400 or 500 strikes per night. And they haven't really affected the Ukrainian will. Iran is 3 times the size of Ukraine. It's a much bigger country. It's going to be very difficult to try and affect anything that would stop them from using the drones and missiles that they've been using, even though the Defense Department has said multiple times they've obliterated things and they've, all their ships are at the bottom of the sea and they don't have any power. It's interesting that on this 6th night of renewed attacks, Iran is still launching attacks against 4 different Arab nations, as well as preventing ships from moving through the strait.
How do you think Iran thinks things are going for them?
Well, they're certainly damaged, that's for sure. They are not destroyed. They are not defeated. They still have capabilities, and they still have a lot of, I would suggest, ammunition in the mountainous regions. They can reallocate and readjust, and they've been doing just that. You know, they know that their citizens are being killed, but they're also measuring some other factors. What is the will of the IRGC? What is the will of the Ayatollah? How are the people supporting this? They've been attacked, and they've had several thousand citizens killed by U.S. airstrikes. So I'm sure they're conducting a metric assessment in terms of how much longer can they support a conflict against the United States. And they know when they're considering their enemy, us, that we have timelines, the president has some timelines that he has to accomplish, and he's not doing that. So they're assessing it just as we are. It is not anything more than a stalemate right now, and I don't think it could conclude in anything more than a draw. Military power is not going to end that. We've seen that, again, in the Russian campaign against Ukraine. No matter how many times you bomb a country, that doesn't bring them to the conference table. You've got to do more things than that.
Peter, you wrote something that really struck me. You said Trump is finding out in real time that he cannot just impose his will on Iran. He knows the war is unpopular, but he doesn't want to look weak, right? When I think about Trump 1.0, he was very frustrated with Bill Barr, frustrated with Jeff Sessions. He wanted the wall between us and Mexico. He wanted them to pay for it. He couldn't get a lot of things done that he wanted. In Trump 2.0, I saw him January, February. He seemed really, really happy in that White House. Nobody was stopping him. But this war in Iran, is this the most uncertain and frustrated we have seen him in office?
I mean, it's certainly up there. I mean, we just talked about the election, obviously. That's a different category of fish. But in terms of governance, yeah, it's hard to see something that has gone so far out of his control. And I think that does frustrate him. He's used to being able to dominate. And he's done pretty well at that in terms of overseas in his second term. He's, pressured or bullied, you might say, NATO allies into spending more on their militaries. He has, used the threat of tariffs repeatedly to extract concessions from trading partners. He managed the snatch and grab in Venezuela that basically gave him control of another country without a whole lot of seeming, difficulty. And so I think he got used to the idea that things were working his way and that he could bull his way through any challenge. And Iran is a different kettle of fish, as the general was just talking about. It's not going to simply bow down to him. It's not going to simply cater to him. And the problem is that the increasing military force at this point, given the bombardment that Iran has already endured, doesn't seem like it's going to change his calculations. So he doesn't seem to have a strategy going forward. He seems to be kind of flailing, looking for something that's going to work. Diplomatic outreach one day, military force the next, be the ones getting him to where he wants to go.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver toothpaste. This has the structural nanosilver to help to neutralize. It also helps to improve your oral cavity, whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce inflammation, help the health of your gum line. And by using this toothpaste, you're reducing the chances of cardiovascular and valvular issues. Good oral hygiene is very important. And if you have poor oral hygiene, that could cause problems with your vascular system. In addition, this has no fluoride. And because it has the structural nanosilver, it is neutralizing. It's very important to use every day, but especially during the cold season. Now, collagen will help to remodel your joints. You take it every day and you do a simple exercise. You open up the joint up to the point of pain and a little bit more, just a little bit more, and then count to 30 seconds or so, 20 to 30 seconds, and then release. And do that 3 times. Do that every day. And what you'll notice is you'll be able to open up the joint more with less pain. Now, this is very important for sports injuries or arthritis. Now, what collagen will do is help to remodel the joint. So you're creating that micro signal with the exercise and stretching it out. And the collagen will help to recruit the building blocks that you need to remodel the joint, especially for the cartilage, and to help to cushion the joint. In addition, it helps to block some of the pain gatekeepers like NAV 1.7. It also blocks inflammation by inhibiting EP4. And it helps to reduce the erosion of the joint by blocking MMP3 and MMP13. This is very powerful. Do the exercise, take the collagen. For added benefit, also stack it with the collagen. So you have the building blocks that help to build and remodel the joint, while this is helping recruit those building blocks. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. And lastly, C60. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce to get the higher ounce configuration, so you can save some money. Also use discount 5 and you save even more money. In addition, C60, by taking a teaspoon a day, will soak up those free radicals, help to bring down inflammation and stress in the tissues. And what will happen is that your tissues will perform better. Your mitochondria in those tissues and those cells will be healthier. You'll have more energy. You'll recover quicker after a workout. By soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. By soaking up free radicals at the cerebral level, what's happening is your neurons are healthier, and the mitochondria in the neuron is healthier, producing more energy, so you can produce more neurotransmitters. And over time, you're going to have that positive neuroplasticity. You're going to be able to think faster. You're going to have better memory. And it also helps the immune system and the endocrine system. Take a teaspoon a day. It's 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. Just a teaspoon a day, every day. And it also helps the basal layer of your skin, so your skin will be healthier. It stacks really well with resveratrol for the skin health. So please go to my store, get the C60. I've been taking this a teaspoon a day, every day for over 10 years. It's very important because it's a very potent antioxidant. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. Please help support the work by going to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and getting the great products that I offer These are products that I take every day to help slow down the aging process. And make sure you use discount 5. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.